Now we're recording to the cloud.
Record to the cloud. Do you notice that I look a little different?
Okay, yes, I was just about to say you look less pink or red or whatever.
So I put on a different shirt. I had a pink shirt on and I thought, well, I can't wear that. Switched my shirt and then I have a filter on to make me still not look so red. I looked in the mirror. I did not look red, but look at what happens when I switch my filter. Hang on.
I was about to say you're using like color therapy for, oh, wow. Oh my gosh.
I don't really look like this. I promise you.
This turned like 5 shades. She looks like a tomato in that one.
I know. And I'm not.
Wait, you have filters on yours?
Yeah.
How do I don't have filters.
Sure you do. Go down to the stop video and use the up caret.
Oh.
Okay, well, not that.
Oops. Okay, here we go.
Use the up caret.
Oh, video filter.
Yeah, that's what I was doing the last episode with.
Wait, mine says none.
Yeah, so if you do the up caret, choose video filter.
Oh, wait 1 second. Oh,
and then it has all the different types of filters.
Mine says choose video filter, and then it says background filters, and there's none. It doesn't have any.
Those are virtual backgrounds. You have to add pictures.
Right, but mine says I don't have any filters.
Oh, that's weird.
Oh, well.
But anyway, I'm not a tomato.
No, you would be a very cute one, though, if you were.
Thank you, Ashley.
We were just talking with your mom about wearing colors and such, and like how it can. Well, she said that back then that was like the cool thing to do was what was it called? Color.
It was to tell you what season of colors you wore. So the winter was, a bright red, white. See, I think my mom is more winter colors.
I think so too.
Yeah, I believe I was either summer or fall.
Mm-hmm.
But she thought she was spring, and I was like, no, you're not pastel. I mean, she looks good in pastels, but
is it what looks best with you, or what like vibe?
Yeah. So they have all these different colored swatches, and they would put it on you to see what your skin looked like, your skin tone. So you had to wear like what you would normally wear for makeup. So if you didn't wear makeup at all, you're fine. Mm-hmm. Or you would go, and they would have these parties, like they would be Tupperware parties, except it was.
I was like, it's like the makeup parties.
Yeah. And then they'd have, like a white, and most people you are blanched out. And then they'd put like a bright red, and my mother looks fantastic in bright red.
Yeah.
And then they'd have yellow, and then I don't look good in yellow. But then they have all these different colors. And then from which colors you look best, and they would tell you whether you were a winter, spring, summer, or fall.
So were they like trying to sell anything though? These parties, or is it just like I want to do that with my friends and just not sell anything?
It must, yeah, because I don't remember buying anything. I think it was just to figure out what your color was. I'm sure you paid, I don't know, like $10 or something.
We do like
to have
fashion like makeup, like we just like do each other's makeup thing. I've never done that. And I come see you.
You've never been to a Mary Kay party?
No, I've been to a Mary Kay, but I just don't like being sold things. So
yeah,
I'm just saying like. Remember like sleepovers and stuff, and you could have. Sorry, this is way off topic from what we're talking about today. But do you
remember? Just like usual, we're right on schedule.
It's like when you had like your sleepovers when you were in like 5th grade, and like kids would do each other's makeup. Like I wasn't allowed to use makeup until high school, so it's like I never got to do the like let's do each other's makeup thing. But I definitely don't want to do it as an adult because I don't want to have to buy anything. I have my own.
No, and I'm too freaked out about germs, so I wouldn't want to share makeup with like eyeshadow. So when I go to see Dan and Pam, Pam will say, oh, do you want to try this? And I was like, well, is it brand new? Because if not, I'm not sharing eye makeup. Like,
no, it's like a huge no. They have that. I mean, I think Sephora and what's the other? Ulta do a pretty. I mean, I think you're supposed to use like reusable, like what are the wands and stuff for the testers. I still don't trust it though. Like I know that there's a way that they make it so that you can test these things, but I'm like, I don't trust other people to do what they're supposed to do.
But the Mary Kay, I used to be a Mary Kay
Mhm.
lady. I don't know if you knew that about me.
I cannot picture you doing that.
Yeah, I wasn't successful. Let's just go with that. But I loved it because I really did it more for the skincare. And
Mm,
this was way back when they had the 5-step skincare. So it's come a
yeah,
long way. But they would have individual things where you could do, one eyeshadow, the
good.
blush, and it was very sanitary. So I
Yeah.
like that.
I remember getting those. Yeah, my grandparents would always bring them to me when I was a kid, and I never could use them because I was too young. And but yeah, I remember them being in like little single packs,
Yeah.
and I was like, "This is so cool." Sometimes I would sneak putting the lip stuff on, and I was like, "Ooh, ooh la la." But let's get back to our topic, I guess. Talk about makeup and stuff for a little bit longer, but
Yeah. I text messaged you and said, hey, this has been coming up over and over and over again, no matter what I do. Now, we all know that Google or our phones or something always hears our conversation. So if we were to talk about, I don't know, chicken noodle soup, now on our phones, Ashley, we're going to have a ton of ads for chicken noodle soup or whatever. But something that's been coming up in conversations, um, even with the neighbors, it is, how do you step back? And it's not burnout,
Mhm.
but how do you know when you need to step back from something to avoid burnout?
Mhm.
And when do you know when that time is? And
Mhm.
I've been thinking about it a lot, probably the past 3 weeks, because it keeps coming up over and over and over
Yeah.
again. And I thought, boy, that's really interesting. What have I taken a step back from that I don't feel like I'm burnt out? It's not burnout. It's not being overwhelmed. It's
Mhm.
just, when do you take a step back from something? When you know you need to,
Yeah. I d-
before you hit,
for the burnout.
before the burnout and before you're just completely overwhelmed.
I think this is a really good topic. When you told me, I was like, yes, we have to do this because I've told you I had a friend recently who did hit like the burnout wall, and he had this whole thing that he was going through, and I was just like, oh man, I feel for you. But it's like, I know you and we're like, go, go, go. We can, we want to do stuff. And it's hard, I think, sometimes for us to say, well, maybe not for you, but it's hard for me to say sometimes no. You're very like, no, I don't want to, but at the same time, you're a go-getter. And so it's for the things that you do want to do, sometimes even doing the things you do want to do, you need to take a step back because you're wearing yourself too thin. So when you were thinking about this, did you come up with anything? Because I feel like I'm still learning as well.
I did. My stock trading buddy had said to me, hey, have you traded lately? And I thought, God, so I'm in 2 different groups.
Mhm.
And one of the groups, I haven't read the newsletter in probably 3 months. So that was an indication. And
Oh
then
wow.
the other one was, I don't think I've traded or even been, well, I haven't traded in over 2 months.
Mhm.
Um, and it's not that I've lost any interest, it's just my body knew, or my subconscious knew, that I just needed to step back. It's not, again, it's not that I'm not excited about the stock market or learning and growing. I just, without even knowing about it, I took a step back.
Mhm.
And then I thought, oh my gosh, I haven't read this newsletter. It's a weekly newsletter. Haven't
Mhm.
read the newsletter in 2 months at that point, and then now it's been 3 months. But
Mhm.
I just thought, isn't it interesting how your body knows, or your subconscious knows before you know?
That's a good point because I think you're right. I think listening, we've been talking about this like obviously off camera and off podcast too about like intuition and
Mhm.
listening to your gut or your heart or what would you say you link intuition, your gut, your heart? I've heard multiple different theories on this.
Well, of course, according
Oh,
to my
brain.
mother and some of my friends, I don't have a heart. So it would be
I wasn't
linking
gonna
to
say
my,
it. I'm just kidding. You cried about a tree the other day, guys. She did.
I did cry about a tree that had to come down in our yard that was super healthy, but it was starting to lean.
Mhm.
And we just couldn't take the chance of it hitting the neighbor's garage or hitting a car,
Mhm.
or,
So
yeah,
I
blocking the
know.
street for hours because the tree was huge.
Right.
And it would have taken the street out for probably a good half a day. But
Yeah.
anyway,
That's why I know you have a heart.
I do have a heart. I go way more on my gut instinct.
So it's funny. I've heard multiple different people say, I consider intuition a gut feeling. They're like, I consider intuition, I follow my heart. And then other people are like, I follow my mind. And I'm like, I think I switch between gut and heart all the time. I think it just depends on the situation. Regardless, I think I got off subject, but yeah, I think it's
no, not you.
Squirrel. But I think it's interesting that you say like following your intuition, because I think a lot of us also know when we feel like we're burning out, but choose to ignore it. Do you find that's happened to you too? Because I sometimes am like that, where I know I need to step back. I know I need to stop. But for some reason, I'm compulsively still saying yes to things I shouldn't. I should be saying, hey, I need to have like a me day. Like I can't remember the last time I've just like had just a day by myself. And this is honestly probably preaching to me, because I need to take a day to just not be around other people, because I'm starting to feel it.
Mm-hmm.
So
I started to feel it a while ago.
really?
And it's not that I ignored it. I just thought, oh, I can probably go a little bit longer.
Mm-hmm.
What are the things that make me happy and what recharges my batteries?
Mm.
And I was thinking, okay, reading, and I hadn't been reading. I love going for walks. I had been doing walks, but not as many as I wanted to or felt like I wanted to.
Mm-hmm.
Just being in the sunshine, it was cloudy. And then I thought, now I'm starting to make excuses.
Mm-hmm.
This isn't the point. The point isn't to make excuses. The point is to figure out, are you on a really bad road right now? And how are you going to recharge your batteries?
Mm-hmm.
And then I started down this path of thinking, does recharging your batteries equal happiness? Because once you are fully charged, or you have taken a step back and now you're coming back into whatever it is that you took a break from, you're happy. So then I thought, does happiness equal a recharged battery? Like you're at your best, you're at 100%, you're ready to go. And I thought, oh my gosh, we have to talk about this. I have to ask Ashley these questions.
This feels so philosophical. Like this is probably one of the most philosophical topics we've had, because now you're making me think. I'm like, man, let's say I'm getting drained of things. It could be work, it could be just life,
or everything, work and life.
Everything. And then it's like you recharge your batteries, but it's just going to drain you again, because some would say that when you do the things you love all the time, you never feel drained. It's less. I'm not saying that you shouldn't ever feel drained, but it's like you've probably had this experience where when you're doing what you love, like taking walks and stuff, it lifts you. And so it's interesting, because it's like, does that mean you should take a step back more often from these other things that drain you?
So then you have to wonder.
Was that an
But I do love the stock market.
Right. Exactly.
I do love the stock market. So even taking a break from that, I had to start analyzing what part of it did I feel was, well, and again, I started stepping back without realizing that I was stepping back. But then when I realized it, I thought, but what part of it was draining? Because it is something that I love to do. And I thought I couldn't put my finger on it. So then I go back to your statement about you never feel drained when you're doing the things that you love. And I was like, but I think there comes a point you could.
That, and I think also it can change over time. And I'm not saying that, I mean, you can still love it, but maybe it's also just that things come in waves. I mean, because that's the thing is so similar to you, like I have been, maybe not similar to you, but I've been kind of not prioritizing like time doing the things that I love. Like obviously, I love hiking, and I probably had not hiked. Like me and my friend Leah hike all the time. We're just great hiking buddies, and I had not hiked with her in like a month and a half, 2 months. And so we finally on this past Sunday, got out and went on a hike, like a 5.5 mile hike, and it felt like such a breath of fresh air, like quite literally, because we were in the outdoors. But at the same time, I was like, man, and it leads me to believe it's like why do we do this to yourselves? If you know that hiking makes you happy and you know that you feel better when you do it, why am I choosing things that instead of doing that? Because I thought about it the other day because I eat pretty healthy for the most part, and like recently I have not been making healthy decisions for eating food, and I can start to feel it. Like I ate a bunch of pizza the other day because we just had pizza, and I was like, I know this makes me sick every time, and I chose to do it. And ironically enough, you gave me a card set that you like pull cards from, and
Yes, I love that.
that morning I pulled a card that said, be mindful of what you eat because the things that you eat make you feel, whatever. It basically said something about be careful about what you put in your body. And that night I ate a pizza and I slept terribly. I felt gross, like I had a hangover from pizza 2 days after. And I was like, I literally chose to do this. So that's an extreme example. But when we know things recharge us, when we know, why are we choosing to not prioritize that? I couldn't answer it to myself because I was like, I know this makes me happy. Why am I choosing not to do these on the weekend, every weekend? It makes me so happy. It sets the mood for my entire week coming up. So I don't know.
Other priorities, housework,
Yeah.
laundry, food prep. I mean, over and over and over again. And nobody's going to have the same week after week
Right.
after. Well, maybe some
Mhm.
people do, but something will come up, or friends will ask you out for dinner, or friends will say, hey, let's go do something. Or we had windows recently installed, and now we're doing landscaping, and all these things get us off kilter of our regular schedule, which
Mhm.
then made me also think, wow, I am much more schedule driven than I ever thought. And I'm
Right.
more of a planner, thanks to Dawn Grams, than I ever thought. So all of these things just started coming to light. How come I don't take 15 minutes in the morning to read? Or how come I don't take 15 minutes in the afternoon or before dinner to read, even though I love all this stuff? And just things happen.
Mhm. I've recently kind of got back on the reading thing because we were doing a lot of reading last year, and I had fallen off
Tons.
the reading ladder too. And so I've recently, this past month, I've gotten back on to the point where I was like, sometimes I don't have the time in the morning, or by the time I have time at night, I'm too tired. So I
Mm-hmm.
started taking my book everywhere. Like the other day I took it to work and I took it to when I got my hair cut. And because I was like, I've got to get back onto this because it was just, I was starting to make it, part of it was starting a bad habit. I was starting to make excuses. I'm like, well, I don't have the time. And I'm like, I do though at work because sometimes if I'm not busy, I take an hour, of time at work for lunch. And I'm like, I don't do anything during that hour. So I just sit on my phone. I'm like, I could be reading. It's just one extra
Mm-hmm.
effort.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah. Or you get to work early and you could sit in your car for 5 minutes and read before you go into the building.
right.
It's super simple.
Right. And I noticed that the days that I do the reading, or when you with those affirmation cards that you and our friend Pam gave to us, I feel like my day changes, and it makes me wonder. It's like that extra 5 minutes that I thought I didn't have ends up jolting my day and getting me more excited, so I become more productive. And so I'm like, it's so funny that when you don't think you have the time, it ends up giving you more time. I don't know, that's just something I took away from it.
No, it does. I totally agree with you. It's crazy.
I get
The
so
other thing too recently that we were going to talk about, not quite in this way, but toxic positivity has been coming up
yeah.
all over the place.
Mhm.
And we are all about being positive. I wanted to throw this out there. When I was reading what toxic positivity is, we really aren't toxic positivity. We are trying to be motivational, helpful, but total case in point, I was irritated last week, and I was really irritated. It's not to say that you can't feel your feelings. It's not to say that you can't have a bad day. It's not to say any of that. But I just wanted to make sure that all of our listeners knew we are not here to promote toxic positivity. We are not here to promote a falsehood of what life is.
Mhm.
We have good days and bad days just like everybody else is. The difference is that the vast majority of the time we choose to see the best in people and situations.
Mhm.
And
I think
that's really, it's not to say that we can't feel our feelings. It's not that we're trying to tell people you can't feel your feelings. It's just, hey, this is how we deal with it. This is how we problem solve. And this is how we make each day a better day. And I tell you what, I love those cards.
I do too. I think that's such a great way that you described it, because it isn't about telling you to overjump your feelings, because I think, and what we've learned this past year and just it's that you have to go through those hard times. Like, you have to go and feel those fullness of your emotions, because that's the human experience. It's unrealistic to think that you'll be happy all of the time.
Right.
Right. And that's the thing. And we both know that. Like, I mean, last week we both had aggravating weeks. Like, we both told each other, I was like, man, I feel so overwhelmed. I am so aggravated. But at the same time, I was like, that's not to say that I don't still love it. Like, I still felt the emotions, and it was like, okay, I'm feeling it. And then you move on. But I think the difference is learning not to live in it. Like, if you have a bad day, you don't sit there and live in it and just sit there and like, you have, at some point you take that and you learn from it and you move on. But at the time that it happens, feel it completely and fully, so that when you are ready to move on, you've done the work, you've done everything that you need to do to learn from the experience and move on. That way you're not repeating the same mistakes, but feel it to its fullest extent. Like, I'm all about that. When I went to therapy, there were some rough days where, man, just reliving and like rehashing like past situations and stuff. It was brutal. But I would say there was no way that I could just toxically pause. I mean, if I had, I would have never moved on from situation. Right. But I think the important thing is that you don't live in it forever.
Yeah, I like how you put that. Yeah. You don't live in it and you don't wallow in it. And we're here to help with problem solving and moving past it. So just wanted to make that clarification, because there were, again, I don't know, Google, or I don't know, somebody listens to your phone. It's the, oh, what was that thing on Netflix that we watched? The Social Dilemma. They're always listening.
Oh, I know. Sometimes that show freaked me out. But yeah, it's so funny you mentioned that though, because my boss brought it up to me the other day. He goes, "Have you heard this term toxic positivity?" And I was, and he's like,
seriously?
Well, this was like a month ago. He goes, he literally came to my desk and said, "Have you ever heard the term toxic positivity?" And I was like, yes. And then he was like, he said something. He was confused about it, because he was upset because they were talking about how like some people people that are positive sometimes being accused of that. And he was like, he's like, just because people are positive doesn't mean that you're toxically. He's like, I think sometimes people get too quick to accuse those things. But
oh, that's like, crazy. I didn't know that.
Oh yeah, that was like a month ago. I had we had like a 30-minute conversation about like toxic positivity and like what that meant.
That's crazy.
Yeah. I'm telling you, it like brings things together. Like things, yeah, it's very interesting. And again, that's obviously not a phone listening. I mean, the phone can listen to you, but that's him just bringing it up to me randomly. So we haven't talked about it before.
No, I had Tom Flaherty, who has been on our podcast before, was doing a sermon, and he was explaining about how he was on our podcast to his congregation. And a part of it was, these ladies don't just say that you need to be positive and move on. Like, that's not how it works. And then he went on and talked about it. And that was the first time that it came to my mind about, well, we're not just spewing positivity. We are trying to get past all of it. Like, how do you get to having a very happy lifestyle like we do? But then it just snowballed into more and more of this. And now it's just become, every time I turn around, it's toxic positivity. And I thought, I just want to make sure that our listeners know that that is not what we are here to do at all.
I think it's good. I'm glad we brought it up.
Yes. And that's crazy about your boss. Yeah.
Yeah, that was like a month ago. So funny. But yeah, I think that as we like learn, I think part of learning when to stop before you burn out is just also learning yourself and your habits, because I over this past year have started to catch on when I feel burnt out. And there's like little things that start to snowball, and it's like feeling tired. Like recently, I have not been sleeping well and I've been feeling tired. And I don't know if it's because there's things on my subconscious that I'm like thinking about or what it means, but I also feel drained. And I have a book about like how to get grounded and stuff. And taking a lot of information from that has been really helpful. And even just things like making sure I find that when I'm starting to feel burnt out, I stop eating as well. And I've noticed that recently where it's like I don't hydrate as much and I don't eat as well. And so I've had to like force myself to get back on that kick, which is interesting.
But here's my question to you. Did you really do it before you burned out, or did you feel burnt out? Because I think that's what I'm trying to get to is, do you notice before burnout so you can correct actions before you get to that burnout or overwhelmed stage? Or do you think you get to an almost burnt out stage? Or do you think you really do get to burnout and then you have to redo everything or redo some things?
I feel like I haven't felt burnt out in a few years. I think probably the last time I felt burnt out was maybe 2 or 3 years ago. And
So it's pre-burnout.
yeah, so this I feel like is pre-burnout. And I wouldn't say I'm even nearly as close because I definitely had way more responsibilities like 2 or 3 years ago than I do now. And so I don't feel like it's burnout right now because I know when I feel burnout, like I lose interest in literally everything. Like I don't, and it's not to say it's a depression or anything because I still
No.
feel happy and everything. It's more or less like I just don't have the mental capacity to do the things that I normally would do. So I'm just like, oh God, I just want to rest. Like,
so what's the first trigger for you now?
now,
Do you think that your body subconsciously talks to you to say, hey, I'm going to make Ashley really tired because she needs to step back from something?
oh yeah. Well, I will say when I did get burnt out, this is before years ago. When I was in college, my body would, before like tests, I would study, and I would just, the pre-testing. And then as soon as all the tests were over, I would get sick for like a week, like clockwork, every single time. And that's when I knew I was burnt out because I would get sick. And so now my body, we're like at an understanding now where it's like, when I start to make you feel tired, that means you're doing a little too much. And so my body instinctively now it's almost instinctive. I get these little nudges. Like my body recently has been telling me, you need to have a night alone. Like, don't hang out with a friend, don't hang out with a boyfriend, like stay home alone. You're going to read and you're going to do a face mask and you're literally just not going to do anything. The other day I had, before my boyfriend came over, I literally just stared out the window and watched the birds for like 30 minutes. And I was like, this is so nice. Like I literally didn't think of anything. And last night I did like a really long meditation because I was like, I forced myself. I usually lay down when I do a meditation and I end up falling asleep. But last night I forced myself to sit up again, on the ground and like actually sit there and do a meditation. And it was really wonderful. And so, yeah, I think for me now, I've gotten a lot better about avoiding burnout by listening, because I think also just over the past year, I think my intuition has gotten a lot better. Like I can much more easily listen to my body and myself and just my mind a lot better. So I don't know. What about you? Have you noticed? Are you better at getting it or?
No.
Oh, you're like,
which is why I think the topic was so interesting to me, because I should know when I start to get really tired. I should know when I stop reading. I should know when I too don't eat very well. I haven't had a vegetable in probably 3 days. That's terrible. And that's not my normal. So I'm thinking, okay, now that I'm starting to recognize the signs that I need to step back from some things, I'm hoping that completely avoids burnout. So I start to feel these things. I take immediate action, step back, regroup, whatever that is for people. And for me, it's being outside, it's reading, it's that mostly that's it. Water, being in the sun,
Mhm.
Drink your water and use your sunscreen is going to be my new motto for
Mhm.
2021 because I'm not doing it. That's another thing.
Drinking
And then
water.
when you just know that you're not on your A game, and then you need to really sit back and evaluate, what am I going to do so I don't hit burnout? I don't want to hit burnout. I don't want to get sick. I don't want to decrease my immune system. I want to be healthy so that when my friends do call and say, hey, do you want to go out for fish fry? I was like, sure. I don't want to be so tired that I can't go out for fish fry.
Mhm.
So I would say no, I was terrible at that.
Mhm.
But I'm really starting to recognize the signs and take stock of the signs
Mhm.
much more quickly than I ever have in the past. And my intuition is spot
Mhm.
on. I should know, hey,
Mhm.
you're starting to get sick. But
Yeah.
yeah, I just found it very interesting. How do you know when to stop before you hit burnout? How do you know when you need to take a pause, a hiatus before you really do hit it? And I thought, wow, that's really interesting. I wonder how many other people really evaluate and do some self reflection on when do I need to step back so I don't get to burnout.
I just think, yeah, I think it's just something you learn over time because, like, I definitely am not an expert in it, and who knows? I mean, I may hit burnout again, but it's like the other day, and I think I told you already, like, I've been um approached a few times, like, over the last month to, like, do additional things at my work, like, in other markets, which is, like, really exciting. Like, it's beyond my normal scope of work. And so it's been really awesome. And so I said yes to these opportunities. And so I'm like helping out a little bit in these other areas. But the other day, like I had one more thing that I had said yes to. So I had like basically two additional things that I'm working on. And one of them is like an ongoing thing, basically forever. And so I I sat and I looked at my like stuff that I had said yes to, and I said, and my intuition told me this, and it said, um, you can't say, you gotta stop saying yes to everything. Like this is the last thing you need to say yes to for a while. And it was completely intuitive, and it wasn't to say like I think growing up, and not nothing that anyone like ever said to me. I think just through school and everything, I always thought that like, oh, take on as many things because it's kind of a weakness if you can't do all of it, you know. And especially with my last job, I had so many different hats that when I get asked to do things, I'm like, yeah, totally, I can handle it. And then I'm like, no, because and here's kind of where I know that burnout's coming is when my level and quality of work starts to slip. That's when I know that I can't handle anymore, and then I'm going to eventually burn out. And that my quality of work has not slipped or anything, but I can tell that if I were to take on one more thing, I wouldn't be able to focus as much attention and keep my level of work high enough that I would be happy with it. And I want to be proud of the work that I contribute. And so I was like, I can't say yes to it in good anything else in good faith.
So, how do you say that? How would you say that to your employer?
I will say I work for a really wonderful employer, and they ask me, they are very great, and ask me, they normally ask me if I have time to do things. Like I don't know if it's through training because I didn't take any training through them, but they are very good about boundaries. And so like, and they will ask me first if I have time to do something. And so that way I have the opportunity to say no. And like if one of if my boss says, hey, can you handle this? I will either say, yes, I can, or say, or there's three things. I'll either say, yes, I can handle it. I'll get it to you soon. B, I can take it on, but I'm gonna have to get the deliverable to you tomorrow. Or I set a time frame, like a
Mhm.
reasonable time frame that I can meet, but I can do it, but it would have to be during this time. Or say, you know what, I would love to, but I can't do it right now. Like I can maybe do this in the future, but at my plate, I just can't handle it right now. Normally that hasn't been an issue, but I will say I've been pretty blessed to have a company that's pretty awesome about that.
You've always said that your company is awesome, and you've always said that they have really good boundaries and they ask
Mhm.
you all the time.
I took a training on it, and it talked about in an internal training with my company, and they're like, make sure you set good boundaries because, and I'm like, that's just a good thing that a company, but that's the thing is for someone who's maybe struggling with that at work, it's hard to say because I think you just have to start with like little boundaries maybe first. I don't know how
I
you
think
approach that.
I think our June 1st episode should be on boundaries.
I Love that idea, because I'm reading a book right now and it's talking about boundaries, and I love that idea, because part of also setting a boundary is A, it's protecting yourself and your energy, which is really important, and B, like a boundary at work is it's setting an expectation, and you don't want to give someone subpar work, and if you can't do it, like I'm really big on being um realistic with expectations, and so if you can't do it, then you shouldn't say you can do it.
I
Because
agree fully.
or if you say you're going to call someone back, you need to call them back. Like you need to
Yeah.
follow up with what you say. So yeah, it's been really, I've been very lucky and blessed that I have a company that's very good about respecting my boundaries and checking with me before I do something. And normally I'll say yes. It's very, last week I had to say, hey, it's gonna be a few days. If you need it now, I would suggest you might have to do it, because I've already, but part of it's also is I'm realistic, and I say, hey, I've already committed to these other 3 things that need to be done in the next 2 days. And I don't have time for it in the schedule.
No, you do. You're being forthright, which is great.
Yeah. So I love the boundaries idea. I think I could talk on that for a long time.
I'll be doing research on boundaries.
Because there are so many different, and listeners, if you have any just thoughts on boundaries, because there's so many different topics. Boundaries in a relationship are really important. That's something I've learned so much so recently. And then boundaries at work, like there's different boundaries with friends, just everything.
Yeah, I'm interested to dive in, and I don't know if we're going to pick one or what we're going to end up talking about, but
I talk about all of them, us.
We could. Speaking of boundaries and states, I gave a shout out last time to our friends in Virginia. And Ashley, where was the other contingent in the United States?
Oh gosh.
Was it Ohio?
I think it was Ohio. Let me see if I can pull it up while we're on here. I mean, obviously we love all of our listeners from everywhere, but goodness, we had Virginia for a while, and then all of a sudden Ohio popped out of nowhere. I think it's
Ohio came from the back and is leading the charge.
Let's see. Ohio has 3 times the amount of listeners as Virginia has.
That's amazing. So Ohio,
where? Yeah.
Here's to you.
Here's to you, Ohio. We should shout out a different place every time.
We should.
Yeah.
So and if you like the podcast, please like and subscribe and let your friends know. We rarely self-promote, so you're self-promoting.
I know, and just we're so thankful for our listeners. I mean, that's just to say that. I mean, we're so grateful that you listen and you take the time to just tune in and listen. I hope you're finding something of value with us, and I mean, and we encourage you to contribute too. If you want to be a part of it, let us know. Like, this is not just about us, it's about you too. So.
Yes, we'd love to hear from you. Yeah.
Well, got anything else?
No, we've talked about quite a bit.
I know, and I'm sad because we don't even have necessarily an answer, but I don't know if there is an answer.
I don't think that there is. I think that's kind of the moral of the story is you need to find your best level, boundary, talking about boundaries. You just need to find out what is the trigger or what are the triggers, and then listen to them and just don't burn out. It's so easy to burn out.
And I would love to hear. Oh, sorry. It echoed a second.
That's okay. I was just going to say too, it just made me think on LinkedIn. That's the other place where I found a lot of information or a lot of people questioning burnout and being overwhelmed. And I thought, this is just prevalent everywhere, which is why I wanted to talk about it, because I think, wow, even I found myself that I needed to step back because I do not want to get to those 2 areas.
Right. And I'm interested too, for all of our listeners out there, if you have any suggestions, I would maybe on Facebook or Instagram or just our email, if you could send in what are different things that help you ground yourself before you hit boundaries. Because I mean, I know for us, we talk about reading, we talk about going out into nature. That's a really big thing for both of us, just getting outside. Every time I go on like a really long hike, I like to go on hikes that just wear me out. Like that just, I feel so tired when I get home, but I find that is the best way it makes my week so completely different. And so I'm interested to know just what are things that you do that are just, I mean, a lot of this about burnout is just finding different ways of self-care that resonate with us. And it could be anything. So what forms of self-care do our listeners use? Because we might find that maybe their idea is good for another one of our listeners. So
exactly.
Yeah.
Yep. Pre-burnout.
Pre-burnout.
Take a step back before you get there.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that's all we have for today. Yeah. So guess till next time, stay awesome.
And keep reaching for your anything.
Goodbye, guys.
See ya.